to find a niche for themselves, particularly in social media or this vast proliferation of media outlets that there is, because it's the under 35 or under 45 age brackets that tend to switch brands. So advertising often is about getting people to try new stuff, and the older you get, the less likely you are. You're sort of rather more set in your ways. So in that sense, it's okay. But the purpose of advertising is actually to get someone to buy something. It's actually to tell someone you've got something to sell. I remember one of the apocryphal stories that we used to trot out in the early days of Colenso. One of our partners had an uncle who bought an old, well, it was long before we were born, but bought a car. I think it was an E60, but it doesn't matter. His wife asked him why he bought that particular vehicle, and he said, they speak very well of it in the advertisements. but you see, you laugh now. There was no irony in those days, because you actually went to advertising for information. Now you go to the web for information. We New Zealanders, I think, we've got one of the highest incidences of online research. Google, 92% of us, will go onto Google to check something out. As long as we know what the brand name is, and we know what roughly the territory is, we'll do all our searching online. For example, in motor vehicles, the average new car buyer tries 1.6 vehicles. In other words, they've already made up their minds by the time they get into the showrooms. There's no such thing as actually test driving a whole range of vehicles anymore.
And Mike, on with vehicles, you see the BMW ads, and you've got all these young people driving them who couldn't possibly afford to buy a BMW. But is that sort of around the basis, okay, you might say, well, they're going to the wrong demographic, but even old people don't recognise themselves as old. We all want to think that we're 20 on the inside, so we don't want to buy something that actually characterises us as old. If we did, we'd go and buy Volvos or something.
Oh, absolutely. I look at myself in the mirror and sort of suck the tummy and think, well, I've still got it. I mean, it's not until I look in the mirror I think, my God, who's that? Because you don't. It's from the inside looking out, the world looks exactly the same as it always did.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's only when you look at yourself in the mirror where you regard. I mean, I'm totally invisible to anybody under the age of 50, because I'll be the guy who gets asked if I'll be Santa at the Christmas party.
Yeah.
And it's just...
I'm with you, Mike. I'm really looking forward to just being a grumpy old bugger, just to be a miserable old man who's just like, walking around going, yep, I'm old.
Yeah, well, you can just be a curmudgeon. But the funny thing is, I don't feel old. I don't feel any older than I did when I was 30.
I know, everybody says that. Your story about the man who bought it because they spoke well of it in the advertisements, it's a lovely story, but it also, doesn't it say something about the complete difference in the level of trust in society between now and then?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that we've become immune to advertising as mosquitoes have to DDT. I mean, like it kind of washes over us, and we'll go online. We'll talk to our friends. It's the whole revolution in social media has done that. But it's trite to dismiss that as only the domain of younger people, because a lot of grandchildren have taught their grandparents to text.
Yeah, no, all that's true. Mike, I got to go, but I appreciate you coming on the panel with us. Peter Fafiu, lovely to see you.
I love it.
And Chris Gallivan, always a pleasure to have you on as well.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, everybody. John Campbell is in Christchurch, and we'll catch up with all the latest on the firefighting. We'll see you tomorrow.
Kia ora everyone, I'm Rowan Quinn, and tonight on Checkpoint, John's live in Christchurch with extended coverage of the fires. He has extraordinary footage and interviews from inside the cordon in Lansdowne Valley, where the earth is scorched and homes and memories have gone up in flames. He'll also be joined by the mayors Leanne Dalzell and Sam Broughton. Plus, in other news, reaction to the announcement the Cadbury factory in Dunedin is facing closure. What does it mean for the workers and the future of manufacturing in the city? Solid Energy's chairman says he'll resign if the company's forced to enter the Pike River mine, and the finance minister rules out a fuel tax for Auckland.
Kia ora, good evening. I'm Katrina Batten. Hundreds of people still don't know when they can return to their homes as fire continues to rage across the Port Hills. The fire is now one massive front that's spread over 1,800 hectares since Monday evening. It's been a calmer day in Christchurch today, but it's unclear how much the emergency is under control. The blaze has claimed the life of a pilot as well as 11 houses and 2 sheds, and 3 people have been treated for fire-related illness. Ian Telfer reports from Christchurch.
Lower winds and cooler conditions have given helicopter and ground crews a good shot at stopping the fire. But Civil Defence says it's too soon to say when more than 1,000 residents can return to their homes. The main activity's been in the Kashmir Hills, including Hoonhay Valley Road, Dyers Pass Road and Worsley Road. The Canterbury District Health Board says 2 adults and a child have been treated this afternoon, but none are serious. A man rolled his ankle while evacuating. A firefighter was treated for smoke inhalation and a 9-year-old boy was treated for asthma. The lines company Orion says 128 customers remain without power in the Port Hills area. In Christchurch, Ian Telfer.
Doug and Vicky Flam's Worsley's Road home of 25 years was devastated by the fire. Mr Flam says there are many things they wish they could have saved.
Like my mum and dad, deceased mum and dad's piano and cellos and musical instruments and things that weren't insured.
He says they're still in shock but plan to rebuild their much-loved home.
But I know good things come out of bad things, so it's just a matter of carrying on and knowing there's a good future ahead.
Worsley's Road resident Doug Flam. Fire investigators are calling on anyone who took photos and videos around when the Port Hills fire started to hand them in. Ken Leggett from Fire Investigation Services says they're looking for specific plumes and plume height in an effort to build up a timeline of when the event occurred. Mr Leggett says this evening he'll quite literally be on his hands and knees on the side of the hill looking for the cause of the fire. A senior executive at New Zealand chocolate business Whittaker's says it's fully committed to remaining in the country. It comes in the wake of today's announcement of the likely closure of Cadbury's Dunedin factory with the potential loss of 350 jobs. Mondelez International is proposing to end manufacturing operations in the city next year and move production to existing Australian sites. Whittaker's New Zealand's Chief Marketing Officer, Philip Poole, says the firm plans to expand, but it's not in a position to absorb any more staff at present.
We are fully committed to manufacturing in New Zealand. We have one factory and that's in Pike River, and we've developed the factory over a number of years and we have got sort of further development plans.
Philip Poole says the decision by the Cadbury owner will be sad for Dunedin. The government's ruled out a regional fuel tax for Auckland, leaving the city's mayor looking for new ways to fund transport projects. The Finance Minister, Stephen Joyce, says he's told Phil Goff a new tax is not part of the government's plans and any eventual road charges would replace existing taxes and charges. Mr Goff had been pushing for a new tax to plug a $400 million gap in funding the projects in the city's plans. He says rates could rise by 16% next year when an interim transport levy was due to lapse.
And I don't intend to impose that burden on Aucklanders because I think it's unreasonable and unfair, and it's not the best way of addressing the problem, which needs to have a user pays component to it.
Phil Goff, the Mayor of Auckland. 2 Pike River families have lost a legal bid to challenge the decision that led to the mine's chief executive escape prosecution. WorkSafe New Zealand charged Peter Whittle with 12 charges relating to the disaster which killed 29 men. Mr Whittle offered a voluntary payment of $3.41 million to the families if the prosecution offered no evidence against him, and WorkSafe New Zealand agreed to drop the charges. Anna Osborne and Sonia Rockhouse challenged that in the High Court, arguing that Mr Whittle's undertaking was a lawful bargain to stifle a prosecution. After the High Court dismissed their application, they took their case to the Court of Appeal, which today upheld the High Court's decision. It found Mr Whittle's payment was one factor in the first court's decision that a public prosecution was no longer in the public interest. It's 5:04. Joseph Parker's first World Boxing Organisation heavyweight title defence appears to be, if it will be, in New Zealand. The 25-year-old is set to fight British heavyweight Hughie Fury, cousin of former world champion Tyson Fury, in his first title defence in April. Barry Guy reports.
Joseph Parker's promoters, Duco, won the rights to the fight last month, and Peter Fury, the trainer and father of Hughie, has said on social media the fight will be in New Zealand. Hughie Fury has also tweeted the fight will be in Auckland, welcoming the chance to fight Parker for the world title in his home city and resume the family heavyweight dynasty.
That's the family dream. Hopefully one day Tyson will come back and we'll rule the heavyweight division together.
Meanwhile, Duco says no contract has yet been signed, nor a venue confirmed. This is Barry Guy.
America's Cup holders Oracle are playing down Team New Zealand's radical pedal-powered catamaran. The New Zealand boat will officially be launched this evening, with it reported to have 4 cycle pedestals on each hull for their grinders, rather than the conventional arm-driven grinders. However, Oracle captain Jimmy Spittle has told Bermuda's Royal Gazette newspaper the cycle pedestals will put Team New Zealand at a disadvantage more than anything else, as it's a compromise. The New Zealand golfer Lydia Ko is 6 shots off the lead in a tie for 17th during the opening round of the Australian Open in Adelaide. Bayern Munich crushed Arsenal 5-1 in their Championships League football round of the first of 16 leg match in Germany, while Real Madrid beat Napoli 3-1 in Spain. That's the news.
Devastating?
Yeah, right now it looks like our house is just getting destroyed, so I just kind of don't want to believe it, you know.
Terrifying.
Our dreams have sort of come crashing down. We were sort of hoping we'd be able to open again at the weekend, but it's looking pretty grim at the moment.
Unprecedented.
I don't think we've experienced anything like this in my whole lifetime. We have, periodically there are fires, etc., but not like this.
Live as it happens, Susie Ferguson and Guy Aspinall, Morning Report, weekdays from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, the challenge of getting primary school kids hooked on science. And after 10, French Malian hip-hop artist Ina Moja, a young victim of female circumcision who now sings for justice. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to midnight tomorrow from Northland to Taranaki, also Coromandel, Bay of Plenty, Taupo, Taumaranui and Taihape. Rain spreading south today with locally heavy falls. Rain turning to scattered showers about Northland and Auckland tomorrow morning. Some of the showers heavy and thundery until evening. For Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, occasional rain. Whanganui and Manawatu, cloud increasing, rain developing overnight, some heavy falls tomorrow. Horowhenua to Wellington, also Wairarapa, high cloud thickening, rain developing tomorrow morning. Nelson and Marlborough fine today, rain developing tomorrow with heavy falls about eastern Marlborough. Canterbury fine for much of today, becoming mostly cloudy tonight with patchy drizzle later tomorrow. Bulla and Westland fine today, high cloud thickening tomorrow. Fiordland, Otago and Southland mostly sunny, cloudy periods about the southern fjords and east coast. And for the Chatham Islands, fine spells. It's 5:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Kia ora everyone, welcome to Christchurch. I'm on the 6th floor of the Civic Building in Christchurch. The Mayor is based here, the Council Chambers are downstairs, but possibly what's most important about this location is the fact that the Port Hills, Cashmere and so on are behind me here, and tonight we cannot see much evidence of a fire. This has been a crucial vantage point for Council staff who've been ducking up here the whole time the fire has been raging, and there have been times when you can actually see flames on the hills behind me here. But the fact remains 11 houses have been lost, hundreds of people are still out of their homes, and the fires are still being fought. And remember, a crucial time is when the helicopters have to stop fighting them after it gets dark. Those monsoon buckets have been doing amazing work, and what we've seen over the previous 2 nights is that the fires have leapt back into further life once the helicopters have stopped. But there is a sense of possibility that they are in control of these blazes now. We are joined tonight by lots of people. First, Leanne Dalzell, the Mayor of Christchurch, and Sam Broughton, the Mayor of Selwyn District. Welcome. I'm going to drag you towards me. Thank you for having me in your building. Leanne Dalzell and Sam Broughton, there seems to be an inference from Jerry Brownlee that the buck stops with you two for the fires not having been fought more effectively earlier.
I don't accept that. What I do accept, though, is that for the calling of a civil defence emergency, yes, the buck does stop with me. I'm the Mayor of Christchurch. If we're calling a civil defence emergency, that sits with me. And if Selwyn's calling a civil defence emergency, that sits with Sam Broughton, the Mayor of Selwyn. But on this occasion, this was a rural fire. All of the powers that were required, all of the resources that were required, all of the logistics that needed to be brought to bear, the requisitioning, even the evacuations, all of the powers were able to be dealt with under the current legislation that was being applied to the fire.
And I think what people are confused about is that when you look out at this view, it looks like a Christchurch fire, but it started in Selwyn, right, Sam? And so it was at first a rural fire, and also now that it's within the boundaries of Christchurch City, much of the firefighting is still rural in the way it's being done. It's on steep hills, it's vegetation, it's that kind of thing. Do you think that Jerry Brownlee's inferences, innuendos and explicit criticisms are fair?
Well, both Leanne and I have met with Mr Brownlee today, and none of those criticisms were expressed to us.
Wait a sec, so the stuff he's been saying to the media he didn't say to your face?
Correct. So we had a meeting this morning where we went through the history of the fire, the way that the fire started, the way that it has been tackled, and the fact that nothing more could have been done, regardless of whether there was a declaration or not, that every possible resource was thrown at this from across our region in connection with our defence force, with the police involved, our rural fire, our volunteers and paid staff from both Christchurch and Selwyn have been involved in this right from the very beginning.
So the fire started in Selwyn and the wind spread it to Christchurch. That's a statement of fact, right?
There were two fires.
There were two fires. And they joined up. So, but I should make the point that even if the fire had started on the boundary, the first fire had started on the Christchurch City side of the boundary, it still would have been a rural fire because the boundary is along a rural ridgeline.
Can I just clarify what Sam said? Mayor Sam Broughton from Selwyn. Did Jerry Brownlee say any of the stuff to your face that he has been saying to the media over the past 24 hours?
I actually haven't heard what he said to the media, but we met with him this morning. He did not raise a concern that the emergency hadn't been dealt with appropriately. I learnt stuff this morning. I think he learnt stuff this morning.
What did you learn this morning?
I learnt the extent of the fire. This is a significant fire. You know, this is the fact that we have got internationally qualified experts living here in Canterbury is a huge advantage. We might have a regional incident management team, but they are the equivalent of a national incident management team, an international team, because they have such extensive experience. They told me today that this is a very, very significant fire, very complex fire. The way that it's being fought is world class. That's what they told me. I'm not the expert.
You've just been in a briefing? Have you just been having a briefing about the latest, or are you about to attend that? Forgive me.
There's just been another briefing to the Christchurch City Councillors, and that's covered off.
Were you asked to attend, Sam? Were you invited to attend as the Mayor of Selwyn?
Leanne and I have done a lot of things joint over the last couple of days, recognising that it is a joint effort. We've had services professionals from both sides of Christchurch City and Selwyn District involved here, and from a leadership point of view, we're tackling this together also.
So what's the latest? What can you tell us? Do you think, and I'm going to ask Douglas any moment, he's standing just across the other side of the room, so I'll beckon him over. What do you think the situation is now? Do you think the fires are under control?
Look, you can never say they're under control. So we're talking a couple of weeks with a lot of teams on the ground, making sure that they're keeping the flanks secure, that they're managing the fire as best they can. But no, we are not out of the woods by any means, and it would be important that people didn't get the message that we're in any way resolved. It looks a lot better today. You can see it from here that it does, but that doesn't mean that we are over. We've still got a long fight to tackle.
Leanne Dalzell, thank you very much. And Sam Broughton, thank you so much. We really appreciate it, you too.
One thing, we did actually want to come on here to say thank you. The extraordinary effort that we've seen, we've both had the privilege to go up from the air and actually see what they've done. People have absolutely gone to their nth degree to save property where they can. They have absolutely fought their hearts out. They're not giving up, and I feel so grateful, and I know Sam feels the same.
Yeah, to see homes that are completely surrounded in black but untouched themselves just points to the specific job that our forces have been able to do in saving homes. And so just thank you so much to those that have been involved on the ground and in the air. Leanne and I both really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam Broughton and Leanne Dalzell, the mayors of the neighbouring districts of Christchurch City and Selwyn. We really appreciate it. I might have to leave the shot. We're on radio, so I'll bring you back. Douglas, come in. I'm going to drag you over. Douglas Marshall, who has been a guest on Checkpoint over the phone the past couple of nights. Come and stand in here, Douglas, on the 6th floor of the civic offices. Douglas, it's lovely to meet you because I haven't. I've only spoken on the phone.
Yes, we have running the phone, but been a busy couple of days.
How are you going? How do you think the fire is going? Are you getting in control of it?
We're going really well today. The temperatures are cooler, the winds are not as strong. We've got 390 people on the ground, 160 of them New Zealand Fire Service personnel, volunteers and paid staff, and 200 rural, including the helicopter pilots, all their support, and all our admin support. So we've got a big resource base.
Yeah, and I've been out watching them work today, and it seems to me they're doing an amazing job. I'm not an expert, you are. Is there anything you would have done differently now, looking back?
Look, it's a valid question, and it must regularly be kept being asked. One of the challenges is this is hill country. Right? It's not flat country, it's hill country.
And I think people get confused about that because it's a city fire, but in fact all the fire areas we've been to are on hills and some of the very steep hills.
So you just don't drive up to the fire in your truck, get out, put your hose into a standpipe in the street and fight the fire. You have to take the water from A to B, whether it's a helicopter or it's a truck. You have to go and collect it from somewhere. If the fire goes off the side of the road and down the hill, you just don't follow it. You've got to go around and chase it. So it's really, really struggling, and therefore those who know Dyers Pass Road really well will perhaps understand when that came up there last night. I mean, there was little we could do. The steepness of the country, the wind, the heat.
The speed of the flames.
Speed of the flames. The bigger the flame, the hotter, the harder it is to stop it. Doesn't matter whether you've got a helicopter throwing water on. Some of those flames just won't be stopped, so often they're trying to steer the flames in the right direction. It's technically challenging work.
And what we've seen and what we saw last night is, one, the wind came up late afternoon and that was really making life difficult because it gusts and it swirls around and it changes direction. And two, once it gets dark, the monsoon buckets stop working, the helicopters stop working.
That's right.
Are you worried the fire will flare back up tonight, or do you think you have beaten it into some form of submission?
Well, I've been saying it's contained and people in there have been challenging me, fair enough too. What happens though is that the fires change direction during each day, and each afternoon we've got a different condition. So today though, there's not been the flare-ups or the new activity, and therefore we'll watch very closely that Dyers Pass Road area in particular, and be watching around Westmoreland, around that area. Last night we had evacuations very carefully. We've worked really hard there today to make sure we try and contain as much as we can. Today's a good day, tomorrow hopefully be a better day, because then we'll try and put containment lines in, create the dirt breaks from the fire, so that if the fire does get away again, it runs into something we've created wherever possible. So we're making really good progress today.
Good luck overnight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, John.
Thank you very much indeed. Douglas, who is the boss of the Rural Fire Service that is fighting this fire. Over the past couple of days, we've spoken to some extraordinary people. Last night we spoke to Phil, who of course lost his home, and we spoke to Ken and Denise, and we were talking to Ken and Denise about exactly what Douglas was just describing, which was that everything around their house was burnt, just to ash, but their house itself was saved. And as we were talking to them, the wind changed and it started to come back towards their house, and they had to evacuate again. Today they were allowed back in, and Brad, our cameraman, and I went with them. It's a fascinating journey because we go up through the scorched land beyond the cordon, and we see the damage the fire has done and the damage the fire hasn't done. Some parts of the area are completely ruined and other parts are untouched. That was the speed of the flames and the speed of the wind and the degree of luck involved. So we go up Early Valley Road now with Ken McKenzie. Is this where the whole fire started?
Yeah, the fire started. Basically, what we've got here, you see there's a 11 kVA overhead wiring, and then there's an 11k spur line that runs up the hill from that, and that supplies the power to the houses further up, and it goes up to the Summit Road, up by the communications sphere on the top. And I've heard that this could have been what caused the fire in the first instance.
So the whole thing started where we are now, everything that's happened over the past few days?
Yes, yep. And it just went up the hill, and then the wind, the northeasterly wind, put it towards our house and just carried on up, just burning the whole hillside out.
I'm struck by how extraordinarily random it is. You go past a completely burnt patch, then you go past another patch of totally dry grass that looks not even singed.
No, it's interesting. As we go up, you'll see how where I've mowed either side of the road, where the grass is a wee bit shorter, the fire hasn't bothered consuming that. Whatever you like to call it. But I mean, where the cattle have eaten up the fence line and the grass has been mowed to the fence line, you'll find that you've got, say, metre high grass at the fence line, and the fire has just followed the fence line up, hence why we've lost 20 kilometres of fencing on our property.
This is you were turning up to your place that weekend?
This is 134, or 1134, if you're probably right. 4.5 kilometres of roading up here, and it's just, everything's just toast. You'll get a better look at it from our front lawn area.
I'm so sorry, because people talked about you as having, survived because your house didn't burn down, but you have lost, what, all your land?
All of the land that we have is toast.
And all your fence is gone too?
Well, the fences, there's 10 kilometres of boundary fence, and there's 10 kilometres of dividing fence to give us our paddocks for grazing, and the whole lot of it is totally burnt out. Interesting, during the evening it was like the fence lines, you didn't realise, but it just looked like street lights, because every fence post that was continuing to burn and smoulder was like a street light. You just sort of didn't realise that till afterwards.
Holy moly, the entire thing pretty much is just black.
Yeah, there's a little bit of land just in front of us up the hill there where the 30 sheep we've got managed to get refuge. So we were lucky with that. We've still got our 2 cats, our dog, our chooks and peahens.
I do not believe it. You drive up the drive and everything is black, and everything around the house is burned and charred and black, and your house is still standing, and there aren't even smoke marks on it, Ken.
Well, there are smoke marks, just I'll show you now as we come around to this. There's a couple of marks there where the downpipes have burnt on the west end of the house, where the windows must have persevered like 40 degrees heat to crack. There was my daughter's bedroom inside, so bedding and things like that didn't catch fire, amazingly. We'll just get out and have a look now. Just here on the corner you see where the downpipe and how close the fire was to the house. The sleepers around the house are burning. We've got, these windows have since been replaced by Metro glass. The rubbers around the glass were melted, and the bed was just up against the windowsill, and the curtains sitting there. Just amazing they didn't catch fire. And just, you can see how the bottom of these posts and just this corner is burnt. And also, once again, the downpipe. I'm amazed, and it was only through the helicopters that brought in the 34 monsoon buckets of water that saved the place.
This wind, this is the thing, isn't it? This is the thing that just...
This is what's going to start it again. This is what's going to start it up, and it's going to keep going. So, yeah.
To people listening, I cannot describe. We have just walked across Ken and Denise's front lawn, and we are now standing in ash. And everywhere you look in the foreground is burnt and black and lost, and behind us the house is still standing, and you can hear the wind, and it is just... So that moved the flames so fast.
Yes, yeah, just the fire, we're just loving the supply of oxygen and fuel, and hence the reason why the fire's travelling so far. And we're just concerned that the fire they say they have under control at the moment is going to start up again. From when the fire started, I didn't get any sleep in the first 48 hours. so from then, I got a couple of hours sleep that evening, and then I've been getting about 5 hours sleep a night.
You're exhausted, aren't you?
But I'm good. We may as well get out of the wind because I don't think you can probably hear what I'm saying without the noise from the wind.
Are you? What's your insurance situation?
That's the amazing part. Excuse me. The only thing we have insured is the house. The house is the only thing that survives. So therefore, that's the situation. We don't have farm fencing insurance, the likes of that. So a lifetime of saving to get what we had has just gone up in smoke. I'm not sure how long it's going to take to regrass and sow the area so we can, do that, and then your trees that are going to take another 15 to 20 years to establish, so you've got some shelter. We're very exposed at the moment with the house the way it is without any shelter trees. It was quite lovely. Last night we were at the Taitap Hotel. My wife teaches at Play Centre, or supervises Play Centre, and one of the ladies come over with her 2 girls, and the girl came over and said she's bought this tree. Sorry.
Oh, I understand, bro. If you listened to Checkpoint last night, you will have heard Phil Claude and the extraordinary description he gave us of the fire moving very fast towards his house and no one realising that it was moving directly towards their house at such speed. He managed to call his wife and his daughter and get them out, and their dog, and that was it really. That was all they got. And we are now looking at what is left of Phil's house, except that's overstating it because there is nothing left. There's nothing there at all, is there, Ken?
No, the house is just totally extinguished. It's just burnt to the ground. It's just a pile of ashes, and I'm not sure what the situation is. They've also lost their car, Katie's Subaru.
Kim McKenzie, who took me up Early Valley Road earlier today. It's amazing to see the scale of the damage up there, what didn't survive and what did, and to have a sense of how fast those flames were moving and how random and arbitrary their path was. I do want to say there is absolutely no power up there now. Of course not. The lines have gone. And I'd like to give a shout out to the people at Goff who just quietly turned up and provided Ken and niece with a generator. What a lovely civilised thing to do. We went and we looped around, and as we came back down the hill we passed John Gordon's house, what was left of it, which is nothing. His wife Margaret and their 3 children, Billy, Rosie and Jessie, also live on Early Valley Road, or did. The family evacuated on Monday night and had no idea their house and, heartbreakingly, more than 40 classic cars, an obsession, a collection of John's had been lost, all burnt. Really tenuous insurance situation. John Gordon told our reporter Zach Fleming today the news was still sinking in.
It's sort of heading home, but not, if you know what I mean. It's. I keep thinking I'm going to go home, and it's just weird. It's. I'm trying to be tough about it.
Where are you guys now?
We've just temporarily gone onto a flat. And what's the street? Just 2-bedroom flat with 5 of us, but we've done it before in the old days. That's just temporary for now until when we sort of work out what we're going to do. See, we even know when it started because my son was behind me he was probably about 8 minutes behind me coming up the road because we've got quite a long road to our house. And there was no fire when I came up, and he came up within 8 minutes of me being there. This was about probably 5:45 by the stage. And he said, there's a big fire down there, Dad. It's just in the middle of nowhere, in the paddock, middle of nowhere. He said, it's just a blaze. And so we sort of smoked, and I thought the neighbour's place must have caught on or something. And I went down there, and both of the roads were actually blaze, and we couldn't actually go down once. So I went and told the neighbours that to get out, and they were just hopping in their cars. So I told them to go uphill, and we all went uphill. Then we had a period where we didn't know what to do, but we could tell by the amount of smoke it was going to get big, or big. So we've got lots of classic cars, so we started moving them to higher ground. And we got about 8 up there, and then we weren't expecting it, but because we would have liked to get stuff out of the house in case. But a helicopter came on our front lawn that they'd already picked up my daughter and my son, and then we just had to wait for them to come back and pick us up, but they gave us no choice.
What did you manage to get out from the house before you guys had to leave?
2 pictures and our computers. One computer, 2 pictures, and that was about it. Because we did, honestly, at that stage, expect to go back to the house. And the other thing that really bugs me big time is that no one's told us till this day that our house has been burnt down.
How did you find out?
Well, we were allowed up there the next day on the Tuesday, and we came around the corner and saw our house levelled, and we were just blown away because we didn't know. We thought it would be just still standing there.
What was that like for you to turn a corner and see that?
Oh, just, you know, when your heart sinks, when it just drops, it's like that. And then it's just like devastation. It looks like a bomb site. It's just flattened, absolutely flattened. But getting past all that, where the people have been so nice and so generous. You know, but there's a lot of nice people out there. There's a lot of generous people out there. How so much support's come in, not from the government, but from Joe public.
How was the insurance side of your house?
Well, we stuffed up. Before the earthquakes. We had scoped up after the earthquakes because we had multiple houses at that stage, you know, and we never knew that we were uninsured before the earthquakes. We just had contents, and so then we couldn't get insurance because it had blockwork damage, and you know, I had plans of getting around to doing it, but it didn't happen. And now we're in a situation where, you know, fire's wiped us out, so we've got contents, but that's all. I don't think it's had us 100% yet, but we've been pretty busy and, you know, trying to get our head around it.
After the earthquakes and now this, do you think you'll stay in Christchurch?
Probably not. Probably not. Make matters worse, my wife's mother just died before Christmas, which has been pretty horrendous.
Yeah, it's one thing on top of another, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty bad. Sorry.
No, mate, don't apologise.
Yeah, got to think of the positive, eh?
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that you just got to get through. It'll just be time, like everything else. It'll just be time, and we'll get there.
Early Valley Road resident John Gordon speaking with our reporter Zach Fleming. John and Ken and Phil are all neighbours, and they, as you have heard, have been very hard hit up there. Henry Rees watching his family home in Worsley Road in Governor's Bay burning down this morning. Terrible, terrible situations for people to be in as they're actually able to stand there and watch their family homes burn. And our reporter Joelle Daly was with him.
So we just came here to have a look up the hill about 6 o'clock this morning. Last night we'd seen our house survive till about 7:30. We lost sight of it due to the smoke and called it quits for the night. Came back this morning to check it out and it looked like it was still all good. At about 7:30, and just after 7:30 this morning, we saw it catch fire and burn down just before all the helicopters arrived, and yeah, it's too late. So.
Did the helicopters try and fight the fire at that point?
It was too late. It was already completely engulfed. There was another fire spreading up the hill towards some other houses, so they were focused on that area, and yeah, we just watched ours go up in flames, and yeah, pretty sad to see.
Another Worsley Road resident is Grant Pulteney. He's also Henry's neighbour. Telling Live's journalist John Selwood came across Grant last night, just moments after he was forced to evacuate his home.
They didn't have fire engines up here. They've got fire hydrants all the way up the road, and they're still not here. I just don't understand it.
And so your house is the White Peak nearest to the flames?
Yes, it is, yeah.
How long have you lived there?
23 years.
23 years?
Yeah.
Is everything in the house?
Yep, more or less. They wouldn't let us get back and get it.
Those flames are now licking the back of your property by the looks.
More or less, yeah.
So how long did you have to get out?
Well, we had a wee bit of time, probably about 5 or 10 minutes, but then I decided to bring one vehicle out because we had about 3 vehicles there and bring this out and just leave it further down the track. I had a mate come up, but they wouldn't let the mate come up any further to give me a hand to get it out. And in fact, the cop pushed me in the chest, got his handcuffs out and said, if you try to attempt to get back in there, my wife was still there, I couldn't even tell her, we had no cell phone reception. Couldn't even tell her that I wasn't coming back to give her a hand to get out.
So what's left in the house?
Well, everything. Everything except a few photo sheets thrown in a box. We only got home we got home and they were blocking the driveway, saying that we had to leave straight away.
It was Grant Poultney talking to our colleague John Selwood last night. This is where Grant lives, a long way up there. And I don't know if you can hear the helicopters in their monsoon buckets working just behind us, not far from Grant's house. Incredibly, we came to this cordon this morning and wandered round the corner, and lo and behold, there was Grant and his family. And Grant was standing there and looking up the hill through the smoke towards his house that does miraculously still seem to be standing. The roof is there anyway, you can see that, and it's a wooden house, so if the roof is there, then the house is probably there. The neighbours are gone. We spoke to Grant a short time ago as he was looking up to find out if he still had a home.
I'm super surprised that I can see anything there at all after watching the flames go through and the size they were. I seriously thought that where they were when I saw it last, when we evacuated it, that it was just going to be gone within probably 15 minutes of when we'd left.
And our cameraman Bradley's coming round, but I'm just going to go off to the left of frame there.
Yeah.
And you can just see obviously still quite heavy burning up in those pine trees, but it was much, much worse than that, was it?
Well, it was, yeah. Well, there's actually another valley. There's a ridge in between here. That's where the adventure park is, up where it's burning at the moment. But there's another ridge here where they felled logs and they'd left the debris. And once the fire got into that debris, it went as fast as you could drive a car. We watched it, and within about 15 seconds it had covered 200 metres or so, and it then came down the valley and up the side towards us, and that happened within 15 to 20 seconds. It was just unbelievable, but it was being fanned by the wind and it was just so dry, it just went, you couldn't outrun it.
It got out of the valley and started going up the hill in just a matter of seconds.
Yeah, it did, yeah. And it just came up towards the house, and the flames were as high as these trees over here. And, well, as your photos will show from yesterday, I just can't believe the house was still there. I just convinced myself that there was about a 0.5% chance that it could survive it.
Grant Poultney, whose house does still seem to be standing quite remarkably, considering all the burning around it. Despite the fact the fire is still burning, fire investigators are already working hard to determine how it started. Ken Leggett of Fire Investigation Services spent the day on Early Valley Road and told our reporter Zach Fleming they're yet to determine whether its cause is suspicious, but they have located its origin.
There's 3 fire investigators at the scene. And what we do is we walk up and down the hill, backwards and forward across the hill, round and round in circles, up and down, and we look at smoke staining on rocks. We look at indicator burns on the remaining bushes and shrubs. We look at the fine grass, the way it's laid over. We look at what fuel hasn't burned. We look at where the wind, and take into account the wind and the conditions and the humidity and all that. And basically you start at a particular area and you keep going back and forward, round and round, until you get to a point. We identify which way the fire's run. We get to a point and say, this is the area, and we're down to an area maybe a couple of metres square.
Wow, it's very, very specific.
Oh yeah. It's not a hit and miss thing. It's taken us 2 days to get to this point, and we're still not completely finished here. We're just trying to eliminate some more causes.
Ken Leggett, who is working to try and understand how the fire began. That's it from Christchurch for the time being, but we will be back here after 6. Ian Telfer's going to join us live. We're going to update you on the situation with evacuations and the status of the fight against the fire. That will be after 6, but let's go back to Rowan in the studio in Auckland.
Thanks, John. Coming up, we have reaction to the news that Dunedin's iconic Cadbury factory is set to close. The chair of Solid Energy says he'll resign if the company's forced to enter the Pike River mine. And President Trump's latest Twitter attack on the media. But first, here's Katrina Batten with the headlines.
The Christchurch Mayor, Leanne Dalzell, says they'll be fighting the massive Port Hills blaze for weeks. She says it's looking better today, but the city is not out of the woods yet. Ms Dalzell says the fire is being fought with world-class expertise. One person has died, 1,000 people have been evacuated, and 11 houses have been destroyed since the fire broke out 4 days ago. The Transport Accident Investigation Commission has recovered the wreckage of the helicopter that crashed on Tuesday while fighting the blaze, killing the pilot. Investigator Steve Walker says the wreckage was in a steep gully under the Sugarloaf. Fire investigators are calling for photos and videos taken around the time the Port Hills fire started. Ken Leggett from Fire Investigation Services says they're looking for evidence to help them build up a timeline. The Pike River families hope to take their fight for justice all the way to the Supreme Court. Today, the Court of Appeal dismissed their bid to challenge a WorkSafe decision not to prosecute the Chief Executive of Pike River Mine, Peter Whittle. WorkSafe had charged Mr Whittle with 12 charges relating to the disaster, which cost the lives of 29 men. Mr Whittle offered a payment of $3.41 million to the families if the prosecution offered no evidence against him. The government has rolled out a regional fuel tax for Auckland, which means the city will have to find new ways to fund transport projects. The Minister of Finance, Stephen Joyce, says he told the Mayor, Phil Goff, a new tax is not part of the government's plans. Mr Goff had been pushing for a new tax to plug a $400 million gap in funding the proposed projects. A senior executive at chocolate maker Whittaker's says it's fully committed to remaining in the country. It comes in the wake of today's announcement of the likely closure of Cadbury's Dunedin factory, with the potential loss of 350 jobs. Those are the headlines. I'll be back at 6.
Thanks, Katrina. Well, let's go to business now with Jonathan Mitchell. And Jonathan, the telecommunications company Spark has reported a higher profit.
Evening, Rowan. Yes, its half-year profit was up 13% to $178 million. That was higher than market analysts had been expecting, and the result was because of a lift in mobile earnings and a contribution from its IT services. During the period, it added another 141,000 mobile connections, and its income from that mobile space rose 4%. In terms of its broadband arm, the income was slightly higher in that space, but the number of connections was quite flat. So it seems like competition is quite tight in the telecommunications market, keeping margins under pressure. The company is taking a good hard look at the small market player Team Talk. Spark's put an offer on the table for them. At this stage, Team Talk is resisting that, so that's likely to be a feature of Spark's second half.
And there's a bit of a legal stoush brewing over the planned Sky and Vodafone merger.
Yes, opponents to that merger, the likes of Spark, Internet New Zealand and Trust Power, have said they want Sky and Vodafone to put their merger plans on hold if it gets approval. Now, the Commerce Commission will hand down their decision next week, and if it gives the green light, those opponents say they will take the matter to court. Sky TV's come out today and said, really, no, we'll continue on with the merger as planned. So that's likely to be a feature of this week. Next week, the Commerce Commission will be out with that decision.
And Jonathan, what's been happening on the markets today?
A fairly lower day for the top 50 index especially. Markets are lower. Spark and Sky TV were some of the losses. The index fell 80 points to 7100. And the dollar is trading at 72.2 US cents and 93.7 Australian. Rowan.
Thanks, Jonathan. Well, Dunedin's Cadbury factory is normally a place that brings smiles of delight to both young and old, but today it was a sombre place as workers gathered to be told up to 380 jobs are under threat. The factory's been a Dunedin icon in one form or another for more than 130 years, but that looks set to finally come to an end. Our Otago Southland reporter Lydia Anderson has this report.
The factory has been producing chocolate for Cadbury for more than 80 years, but from next year, that story will come to an end. Ex-Cadbury employee Keith Humphreys, who was visiting Dunedin today, lost his job after 21 years when Cadbury closed its Auckland factory in 2009. He says he has some idea of what the Dunedin workers will be going through.
The day they told us, they got us everybody into the lunchroom, and everybody had an idea it was some serious thing they were going to tell us, and they just let us go straight home afterwards. And each time a section closed, they would have a farewell in the lunchroom, and there'd be boxes of tissues on the tables, and it was a whole lot of sad occasions, I remember, yeah.
Mr Humphreys says he's shocked to hear of the latest closure, particularly because Auckland staff were told Cadbury was shifting some production to Dunedin. Locals weren't happy about the news either.
I'm horrified. I mean, it's a Dunedin icon, isn't it, really? And apart from being such a huge employer, and all the tourists that go through the tour as well, I mean, it's going to diminish all that as well. And I mean, we know people that are second and third generation that have worked there, so it's really sad to see that go.
Oh, I think it's terrible. Multinational firms screwing New Zealanders again, I think. No, very sad.
Oh, that's terrible. Yeah, no, I'm definitely opposed to that.
It's been here for years. I'm quite surprised. I actually found out when I went to get my hair cut.
Well, that's not good for the economy here. Like, we have that in the university, so we get all the cruise ships, and that's one of the first things they do. They stop in there, and that's $50 per person.
Absolutely gutted for 300 people, yeah. It cannot happen in Dunedin. We need to, change it somehow.
Air 2 union spokesman Chaz Muir says the union had thought the factory was doing well. He says the local union in Dunedin was contacted by the company late yesterday and told about the proposed closure. Mr Muir says the workers are covered by a robust collective agreement which carries decent terms and conditions and also redundancy.
We will support those workers right the way until the factory door closes.
Cadbury's parent company Mondelez International says if the closure goes ahead, the first group of staff will be made redundant later this year and production will be moved to Australian sites. Workplace Relations Minister Michael Woodhouse says it's not possible for the government to bail out Cadbury, but says another business could take over the processing part of the Dunedin site. Labour MP for Dunedin North, David Clark, says although the tourist attraction Cadbury World will stay open, the job losses will hit the city hard.
Look, I'd like to see them succeed in that regard, but it is going to be hard when you rip the manufacturing heart out of the industry in Dunedin. The immediate effect and impact of this huge cut to the workforce will have consequences throughout the community.
Dunedin's Mayor Dave Cull says he's working with local agencies to support the workers and wants them to know they're not alone. In Dunedin for Checkpoint, Lydia Anderson.
Well, Amanda Banfield is the Area Vice President of Mondelez International, which is the owner of Cadbury. She was in Dunedin today to give Cadbury staff the difficult news, and I asked her how they reacted.
Obviously, this has been really difficult news for them to absorb, and our immediate focus is very much on supporting them. The reaction was sad. I think it was a sombre mood, and I would say that there was some shock, as there always will be with such a big announcement. But actually, probably people were not that surprised, given really the reasons that we've taken this difficult step to move to consultation today are really long-standing, and they are about the difficulties with mass manufacturing in this location.
So is this really just a consequence of this Dunedin factory being a very small, very distant cog in a big wheel?
Look, I think the challenge really is that despite all the fantastic efforts of the team here, and they really are an outstanding manufacturing team, they've really driven very hard to find every productivity and efficiency saving. But the challenge really is we are a long way from the big markets that we're servicing. We're actually exporting over 70% of what we make here, into Australia. That's a very expensive stretch of water to ship over. And we struggle for volume. And, we'd actually need to triple the volume in this site if we were able to believe that it really had a long-term sustainable future. So it's these big factors really about being a long way away from the core market that's really, in the end, unfortunately, driven us to take this difficult step today.
And has the strong currency had an impact, Amanda?
Yeah, this really hasn't been about currency. It's actually really as a result of these long-term challenges, which we haven't been able to overcome, despite investing about $80 million into the manufacturing plant here over the last 10 years to help it with efficiency. And despite the fact that we've brought a lot of Australian volume to the site, we still have just found that in the end, that tyranny of distance has been a real challenge for us. In the end, it's that combination of factors around lack of scale, around distance, and also quite a complicated portfolio here that drives up costs that's unfortunately led us to this difficult step today.
What are the options for staff at the factory now?
Right, so we've talked to our team today about the initial next step, which is very much supporting them, first of all, to absorb this information, but also then to be able to start to move through consultation. I must stress this is a proposal only at this stage.
Is it really likely that you would, what would it take to change Mondelez's mind on this issue? You say it's a proposal, but it seems like from what you're saying that it's very likely that this factory is closing.
Sure. Look, it is very challenging for us to sustain operations here. These are issues that we've grappled with for a long time. We've conducted a very thorough review. We've considered many different options, and very sadly, we haven't been able to see a way forward, which is why we've moved to consultation. And I have been open with the team today around saying we know these are long-standing issues. We've all grappled to address them. So going into consultation, it is absolutely about seeking every and any idea, suggestion and feedback, and we will take that on board. But, from the company's perspective, going into this process, I guess we've sort of exhausted all options that we could think about.
So does this mean now that all Cadbury products sold in New Zealand will be manufactured offshore?
So should this proposal go through, that it will be the case that all of the products that are sold here will be manufactured overseas, mainly in Australia. Obviously, our commitment to Kiwi consumers will be that we bring the same quality and taste and products that they've grown up with and come to love and expect from us. But yes, should this proposal go ahead, that will be the case.
Are there any products now that are only made in the Dunedin factory, not made anywhere else around the world?
Yeah, there is a small portfolio of what we call Kiwi favourites, which are brands like Pascal Pineapple Lumps and Jaffas, which are only made for the New Zealand market. That small range of products, we are actually looking through the consultation process to see whether there is a local manufacturer here in New Zealand who might be interested in manufacturing those on our behalf into the future. That's something that we will explore following consultation should this proposal be adopted.
And if no one takes that up, does that mean perhaps that the future of Jaffas and Pineapple Lumps is uncertain?
No, I can absolutely assure you that we do have a plan for manufacturing both Pineapple Lumps and Jaffas to the same quality and taste as today within one of our Australian facilities, should we be unsuccessful in finding a local manufacturer who could make them on our behalf.
And that's Amanda Banfield, who's the Area Vice President of the Cadbury's owner, Mondelez International. Well, the chair of Solid Energy says he'll resign if the company is forced to enter the Pike River mine. Andy Coop was speaking at an emotional select committee hearing where the state-owned company was having its annual financial review. He faced a barrage of questions from MPs, including the Labour leader Andrew Little and the New Zealand First leader Winston Peters. Our political reporter May Heron was there.
Emotions ran high as both Solid Energy and the Pike River families appeared before a select committee today. Winston Peters and Nationals chair Melissa Lee got into several yelling matches, and at one point a person sitting in the public gallery stood up and hurled abuse at the three Solid Energy representatives.
Order! 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 Please, order!
Chair of Solid Energy, Andy Coop, told MPs their position has not changed in years and it is still too unsafe to enter the Pike River mine. He was asked whether he would change his mind if there was no legal liability on the company.
Notwithstanding the fact that I would have no liability, I would resign as a director. I would not want to be director of a company that put people at risk.
The Pike River families, Dame Fiona Kidman and a mine safety expert also appeared before the Select Committee. Sonia Rockhouse, who lost her son in the explosion, told reporters she wasn't impressed with Mr Coop's resignation offer.
Oh, I think that's a nonsense. That's just a nonsense. It's a silly comment for him to make, I believe.
Is that a stunt, do you think?
Aye, absolutely. Because they were stumped. They really came with nothing. They didn't even bring their expert. We at least had an expert.
Yesterday, when the families met the Prime Minister Bill English, he assured them the mine will remain unsealed for the time being. Andy Coop says that was the first he had heard of the plan.
Look, the circumstances are somewhat unique here. I was advised by his office almost the moment he was going in to meet the families.
Would you have preferred to know well beforehand, considering?
Ideally, but I understand the position that he's in.
Anna Osborne, who lost her husband, says Solid Energy is still refusing to be transparent about how safe the mine is to enter.
You know, Solid Energy are still hiding behind things. We want to get up there, we want to get the evidence, we want to reclaim the drift, and, you know, we still need justice for our men.
When asked if it was possible to enter the mine if Solid Energy had a blank cheque from the government, Andy Coop says there would be options, but they would be extreme. For example, taking the top off the mountain. From Parliament, May Heron.
To Washington now, and President Trump began the day with a full-on Twitter attack on the media and his own intelligence agencies. The focus of his anger is a new report that his campaign team had frequent contact with Russian intelligence during the election campaign. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister of Israel was at the White House today, trying to make the Middle East and not Russia the centre of attention. The BBC's John Sopel reports.
These are not the best of times. Not yet 4 weeks in, his travel ban's been blocked, his national security advisor's been fired, and the questions about his links with Russia are piling up. And when the president is angry, the place he vents is on Twitter. And boy, did he let rip this morning. This Russian connection nonsense is merely an attempt to cover up the many mistakes made in Hillary Clinton's losing campaign. The real scandal here is that classified information is illegally given out by intelligence like candy. Very un-American. And on the reporting of this, the fake news media is going crazy with their conspiracy theories and blind hatred.
The President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Israel.
At his news conference with the Israeli Prime Minister, no mention of concerns about links with Russia. And you'd never have guessed that it was the President who'd forced General Flynn's resignation.
Michael Flynn, General Flynn, is a wonderful man. I think he's been treated very, very unfairly by the media, as I call it, the fake media in many cases. And I think it's really a sad thing that he was treated so badly. I think in addition to that, from intelligence, papers are being leaked, things are being leaked. It's criminal action, criminal act.
But on Capitol Hill, there's one central concern among senior Republicans and Democrats. It's the administration's links to the Russian government. This is what we know. On January the 15th, the Vice President went on television to deny that Russian sanctions had been discussed in those phone calls. On January the 26th, the Acting Attorney General tells the White House actually they were. That's when the President was informed. But it wasn't until February the 9th, when the story was about to break in the press, that Vice President Mike Pence was told. That means he was deliberately kept in the dark for over 2 weeks. And listen to the President last Friday.
I don't know about it. I haven't seen it. What report is that?
And this was his spokesman yesterday, seeking to explain that discrepancy.
What he was asked specifically is, was he aware of a Washington Post story? He hadn't seen that at the time. Of course he was involved. I just said that he was aware of the situation right after the White House counsel informed him back in January.
It's hard to avoid the conclusion that this is an administration that is reeling. Just take Donald Trump's controversial travel ban. He announced at the end of last week there'd be a new executive order on Monday or Tuesday to replace it. There's been nothing. Work is not getting done because of the turmoil.
And that's John Sopel from the BBC reporting there from Washington. however you're doing tonight, thanks for joining us. I am Rowan Quinn. After 6 tonight, we'll go back to John for the latest in Christchurch. Today, the Prime Minister was on the ground and in the air, touring the fire by helicopter to see what was happening for himself. John will have the latest on that, and he'll be joined by our reporter Ian Telfer, and he'll have an update on a resident, Vicky Flam, who we spoke to last night. She was at an evacuation centre and she had feared that she might lose her home. Plus, Dunedin's Mayor Dave Cull has his take on the closure of the Cadbury factory, and the Finance Minister rules out a fuel tax for Auckland. We'd love to hear from you, as always, in any way you choose. You can text us on 2101, you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, Facebook us, Checkpoint with John Campbell, or email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. And don't forget, you can watch us online at rnz.co.nz.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui, good evening, ko Katrina Batanaho. The Christchurch Mayor, Leanne Dalzell, is warning they'll be fighting the massive Port Hills blaze for weeks. She says it's looking better today, but the city is not out of the woods yet. 1 person has died, 1,000 people have been evacuated, and 11 houses have been destroyed since the fire broke out on Monday evening. Ms Dalzell told Checkpoint the operation to control the fires has been world-class, but the fight to protect the city is not finished yet.
We're talking a couple of weeks with a lot of teams on the ground, making sure that they're keeping the flanks secure, that they're managing the fire as best they can. But no, we are not out of the woods by any means.
Leanne Dalzell says a lot of teams will have to remain on the ground, making sure the fires do not flare up again for at least 2 weeks. The fire service does say it has made excellent progress today fighting the Port Hills fire. Almost 400 people are battling the flames on the ground as helicopters continue to drop monsoon buckets from the air. Lower winds and cooler conditions have given them the edge today. Selwyn's Principal Rural Fire Officer Douglas Marshall told Checkpoint there haven't been any significant flare-ups today and his crew will monitor the situation closely overnight. He says he hopes containment lines can be formed tomorrow around parts of the fire. The Christchurch City Council says all current police cordons in the Port Hills will remain in place tonight. They're likely to continue until Saturday, when they will be reassessed. The Port Hills fire has taken everything from Early Valley Road resident John Gordon, apart from a couple of pictures and a computer. The family were evacuated on Monday night and had no idea their house and more than 40 classic cars had been lost until they returned home the next morning.
Well, we were allowed up there the next day on the Tuesday, and we came around the corner and saw our house levelled, and we were just blown away because we didn't know. We thought it would be just still standing there.
John Gordon says the full extent the loss is still sinking in. He says the fire coming on top of the earthquake will likely mean his family will leave Christchurch. 3 people have been treated for fire-related injuries in Christchurch this afternoon. A Canterbury District Health Board spokesperson says the conditions of the 2 adults and 1 child are not serious. The spokesperson says a man rolled his ankle while evacuating. A firefighter was treated for smoke inhalation and a 9-year-old boy was treated for asthma. The wreckage of the helicopter that crashed while fighting the fires on the Port Hills, killing the pilot, has been recovered. Steve Askin died when the Squirrel helicopter went down on Tuesday afternoon. The Transport Accident Investigation Commission's investigator, Steve Walker, says the recovery operation this afternoon was challenging. He says the wreckage was in a steep gully under the Sugarloaf and conditions were hot and windy, making it difficult for the crew on the ground loading the wreckage on. Mr Walker says it took 5 trips to carry it out before it was loaded on a truck bound for Wellington to undergo further analysis. Dunedin's mayor says the loss of the Cadbury factory will be devastating for the city, but he already has a plan in place to help hundreds of workers who could lose their jobs. The owner, Mondelez International, is proposing to end manufacturing operations in the city next year and move production to existing Australian sites. Dave Cull says the factory is one of the city's biggest employers and manufacturers. He plans to pull together a working group of organisations, including the Employers Association, Chamber of Commerce and Ministry of Social Development, to develop a cross-city effort to support the workers.
It might be, in some instances, retraining, in other instances, looking for other work for them. But it has to be, as I say, a whole-of-city effort.
Dave Cull says Dunedin is renowned for its loyal workforce and the news is devastating for them. In the United States, a proposed regulation tightening checks on mentally ill gun buyers has been blocked by the Senate. The law, introduced by the Obama administration, stops people who receive disability benefits from buying guns, affecting an estimated 75,000 people. But Republicans who control the Senate argue it stigmatises the disabled and voted it down 57 to 43. The President, Donald Trump, is set to approve the revoking of the rule, his first action on gun laws since taking power. Wellington commuter trains heading for the Hutt Valley have resumed service this evening. They were temporarily suspended due to a breakdown on the tracks near Kaiwharawhara. It's almost 6:05. To sport, Team New Zealand has unveiled its new America's Cup boat in Auckland, and it does include pedal-powered grinders rather than the traditional hand grinders. The team has also confirmed the addition of Olympic medal-winning cyclist Simon van Veldhoven to the onboard crew. The America's Cup starts in Bermuda in May. Kieran Foran's return to the NRL playing field may not be an easy one, but Warriors teammate Simon Mannering says he's certainly not shown it on the training field. The NRL registered his contract yesterday, allowing the troubled former Eels playmaker to start playing from round 3 on the proviso he passes a further psychological assessment. Mannering says Foran has been very professional in pre-season.
You probably didn't even notice it on Kieran, the way he's trained ever since he's been here. You haven't noticed that he's not even sure if he's going to play or not, because he's just been into everything and pushing himself, pushing the guys around him, and been training really well. So it's just sort of didn't notice too much between then and now when he's got the green light, and that's the sort of player he is.
Simon Mannering. The Warriors played Gold Coast in a pre-season trial in Palmerston North on Saturday. New Zealand's world golf number 1, Lydia Ko, is in a tie for 22nd, 6 shots off the lead, nearing the end of the opening round of the Australian Open in Adelaide. And the New Zealand under-17 football team has beaten the Solomon Islands 2-1 for their second straight win at the Oceania Championship in Tahiti. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, talking jellyfish with Niwa's Dennis Gordon. Are they fish at all? Are there more around in the summer? And just how dangerous are their stings? Our changing world goes in search of some lost graves, and this week's cultural ambassador, Kirsten Zemke, shares her love of hip-hop. Tonight, hippie rappers, giving peace a chance with every syllable. On Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met surface weather through to midnight tomorrow from Northland to Taranaki, also Coromandel, Bay of Plenty, Taupo, Taumaranui and Taihape. Rain spreading south today with locally heavy falls. Rain turning to scattered showers about Northland and Auckland tomorrow morning. Some of the showers heavy and thundery until evening. For Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, occasional rain. Whanganui and Manawatu, cloud increasing. Rain developing overnight, some heavy falls tomorrow. Horowhenua to Wellington, also wide at upper. High cloud thickening, rain developing tomorrow morning. For Nelson and Marlborough, fine today, rain developing tomorrow with heavy falls about eastern Marlborough. Canterbury, fine for much of today, becoming mostly cloudy tonight with patchy drizzle later tomorrow. Bulla and Westland, fine today, high cloud thickening tomorrow. Fiordland, Otago and Southland, mostly sunny, cloudy periods about the southern fjords and east coast. And the Chatham Islands, fine spells. It's 6:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Welcome back to Christchurch, everyone. We're on the 6th floor of the Civic Building where the Mayor and the Council are based. We've spoken to the Mayor, we've also spoken to the Mayor of Selwyn, we've also spoken to the head firefighter in charge of the battle against the flames, which are not conspicuous on the Port Hills behind us here, and that is a very good sign. They are at their lowest level that they have been for quite some time, but the monsoon buckets stopped working after nightfall and the wind is a little gustier now, so people have their fingers crossed that the state of submission the fires are currently in will remain overnight. We're going to bring in our reporter Ian Telfer. Ian, welcome. You have some breaking news, I guess, on what's happening here.
I guess we can call it that, John. It's very different, isn't it, from yesterday when we were having the dramatic scenes of the fire burning right across that band. But now we've just learned from the Christchurch City Council that the police cordons will stay in place tonight, and in fact they're likely to stay in place until Saturday. So I think that means that evacuations, that the evacuees are going to be out until likely Saturday. I mean, we need to confirm that for sure, but that seems to be the situation.
Okay, so the people who are out of their homes won't be returning to sleep in them for another 24, 48 hours.
It appears that way. At the same time, as you said, the situation with the fire is very different now. Today has been a much calmer day, and we heard, didn't we, the controller saying earlier that it's been a good day as far as they're concerned. No new flare-ups, no new activity in terms of the fire. And if you look at those fires, what you see is just massive burnt-out areas, but no flames and no real smoke. So they have made good progress. Yeah.
What have you been up to today? I bumped into you a couple of times as we were racing around. Where have you been?
Yeah, we've been out with the evacuees all this morning, talking to them about that. That was very scary for them, watching their houses being threatened, in some cases being lost. But we've also been talking to the government and following them because as they swung into action last night, today they were on the ground, the Prime Minister and 2 ministers, touring and seeing for themselves. So here's what happened today. Today, the Prime Minister was on the ground and in the air, touring the fire by helicopter to see for himself. After a briefing, Bill English praised the firefighters, but said it was clear the fire's large and still a risk. Mr English says he thinks parts were lit.
Look, I've only had a very brief description of the fire starting in 2 places at about the same time, which to someone like me looks suspicious, but those investigations are underway.
But after the Civil Defence Minister Jerry Brownlee said it took too long to declare a state of emergency yesterday, the Prime Minister faced a barrage of questions. He refused to criticise the call, but said it would be reviewed once the fires are out.
People go back through the process, and that's for another day. What's important now is the ongoing containment, hope that the weather stays right, and that the people who are affected have the support of the community.
Mr Brownlee's maintaining there's a problem. He says he got better information from the news media than Civil Defence, and he didn't have enough information to call the state of emergency himself.
We're getting some sit reps, but those were very brief one-liners. Look, you're getting into, this question gets into degree of criticism. I'm not going to criticise anyone who's on the ground here. It's hard work. Yeah. It's structures inside the legislative arrangements that fall to politicians to fix.
The Defence Force has been brought in and a US Coast Guard boat at Littleton's helping too. But not every offer's being taken up. Bill English says Australia's offered firefighters and he'll take them up if they're needed. And RNZ News understands Littleton Port offered a fire engine to the Rural Fire Service last night, but was told they didn't need it. Christchurch's Mayor Leanne Dalzell is defending the decisions.
There was, I believe, a bit of a breakdown in communication in terms of information that was being supplied, but I have had a full briefing this morning with the Mayor of Selwyn, and I am satisfied that there is nothing that could have been done, would have been done any differently had we called the state of emergency earlier.
But for the more than 1,000 evacuees from the Kashmir Hills, it's just an agonising wait to be allowed to go home. Alastair Hodson was told to leave his home at 2 a.m. this morning and was parked up at the evacuation centre with his partner and 2 dogs. He's shocked by the fires.
I've never seen anything like it in my life, and I've lived up there for probably 16 years, so it's quite incredible that Christchurch is sort of dealing with this at the moment.
Another resident, Vern Horton, says last night he watched helplessly as the flames advanced down the hill towards his home.
It's just a change of wind that saved us, I think, yeah. You get that heavy wind there and it's travelling at 20 k's, it doesn't take long to reach it. Just across the ditch there. It's scary.
It's been another long day and the Port Hills fire emergency's not over yet. In Christchurch, for Checkpoint, Ian Telfer.
Thank you, Ian. Last night on Checkpoint, it really was an extraordinary situation where things were changing very fast. The wind was pushing the flames in all new directions and they were flaring back into life in some areas. And we were talking to people who were losing their homes, who had lost their homes and who had absolutely no idea what was going to happen to their homes. And one of the people in the latter category was Vicky Flam. If you were listening last night, you will remember Vicky joining us live. She was sitting looking up as the flames approached down the hill, down the Port Hills, towards her house. We all crossed our fingers and hoped that the flames would avoid Vicky's house. They didn't. She lost it. Today she had to deal with that. But unlike some, very, very quick action by a great and wonderful friend managed to get some precious possessions out in time. Vicky spoke to our reporter Jonah Daly this morning.
Doug and Vicky Flam have lived on Worsley's Road for 25 years. Mrs Flam got a call from a friend yesterday telling her flames were near their home and she rushed back to grab what she could. I've got photo albums, photos off the wall that I thought I wouldn't get digital prints back of. Believe it or not, some Plunkett books of the kids, just stuff that was in the library that I had where I had all the photo albums. And then even now I'm still starting to think of all the things that we'll never get back, you know. So we were watching from Centennial Park last night up to about 10:30, and we could, once the helicopter stopped that and that fire got a hold, we could see quite high flames around where our house was. So I kind of thought even then it might not be good.
About 10 o'clock this morning I went up the hill with some binoculars. I'd called into Worsley's Road but the police wouldn't let me up to the top, and they said try and look from Hackthorn Road across, so I did that, and you could see the east end of our house, still a bit of smoke around the place, and where the roof used to be you could see a big digger arm. I thought that didn't look quite right. Still pretty foggy, but I phoned up Vicky, my wife, to tell her the news, and then I went into town to get some better binoculars, and it was quite clear that it was all gone.
In some ways I want to see it, in some ways I don't. Like I'd rather just, you know, like not see the memory, and then other times, you know, like maybe something salvageable, but honestly I can't see what, not from what I could see through the binoculars when I was looking across from the hill. So
we've been through a few struggles at different times, and when you think about what other people go through, like the helicopters pilots' parents, it's hundreds of times worse than what we're going through. So I really feel for the Askins and for other people that have lost more.
Doug and Vicky Flam talking to our reporter Joanne Daly. After the earthquakes, people in Christchurch so often said there is someone worse off than me, and it is an extraordinary spirit, and the bravery and generosity of the people who have spoken to us over the past 2 or 3 days, you will all have heard it. On behalf of everyone in our excellent Christchurch team, our reporter Brad, our cameraman Brad and me, we are now throwing you back to Rowan in the Auckland studio.
Thanks, John. And we are heading to Dunedin now, where the Mayor says the impending closure of the Cadbury factory is a reminder that manufacturing will probably not be a part of the city's future, given its distance from major markets. Cadbury's owners proposing to close its factory in Dunedin next year with a loss of more than 350 jobs. Mondelez International plans to move production to Australia, where most of the products currently made in Dunedin are sold. The Dunedin Mayor, Dave Cull, says Cadbury is one of the city's biggest employers.
Oh, this is devastating, particularly, obviously, for the workers. Dunedin is renowned for its loyal workforce, and in fact, that's probably one of the reasons that this factory has been here and stayed here for as long as it has, that workforce. So, yeah, it is devastating for them.
And what's the council doing to help support those workers?
Right, so I was informed of this about 9:30 this morning by James Kane of Mondelez, and that was before he went to the meeting where they put the proposal to the workers. So immediately I got a hold of the Chamber of Commerce, the Employers Association, MSD, and talk to Mondelez themselves about it, and I'm going to pull together a working group of those organisations and maybe some other major employers with a view to having a cross-city effort to support the workers. It might be, in some instances, retraining, in other instances, looking for other work for them, but it has to be, as I say, a whole-of-city effort, not sort of in silos, if we're going to be successful.
Yeah, and what does this closure mean for the whole city? What does it mean for Dunedin and business in Dunedin?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, there's 360 pay packets that are not coming into the city, and I'm sure that Cadbury's employs a lot of tradespeople and contractors, etc. So it'll leave a big hole in business in the city and in employment, and we've got to work really, really hard to plug that up.
And do you think the writing's been on the wall for a while about this closure?
Look, realistically, possibly, because if the two imperatives that were explained to me that drive this, one is distance from markets. 70% of Dunedin's Cadbury production goes to Australia, and the other 30% pretty much all goes to Auckland, or the North Island anyway. So there's a competitive disadvantage because of the freight cost. And the other is that this is an old factory, and its ability to, it's just not able to produce the volumes that contemporary food manufacturing companies expect from a plant, whereas their Australian plants have got capacity to do that. So those two imperatives were kind of the writing on the wall, it seems to me. And I guess it's a reminder that Dunedin's geography is such that our future is probably not in manufacturing where the product has to be shipped a long way to markets, and we found that with Fisher and Paykel, among others, in the past.
So do you just give up on manufacturing in Dunedin?
No. There's some niche manufacturers that are doing very well out of Dunedin, but the kind of product in general, which will be the future of the city, is more weightless product that doesn't need the freight or be large or won't be large volume. I mean, we're a very long way from the markets that we want to serve, so the product has to be economical to get there.
Just finally, Dave, it's I guess a smaller matter compared to 350 people losing their jobs, but Jaffas and pineapple lumps might be now made in Australia. What do you think about that?
Well, we may have to preserve some part of the tradition. You know, one of the things that Cadbury's has been involved in here is the chocolate carnival, and the Jaffa race down the steepest street in the world, Baldwin Street. I'd be very keen to retain that here. So we might have to import Australian Jaffas, if that's not an oxymoron, to run that. And the other thing is Cadbury World, which is a major tourist attraction. I note that Cadbury's are saying they haven't made a decision on that. It's the manufacturing that they're proposing to cut. So I'm looking forward to discussions about trying to retain that as an attraction here, and in some ways as a legacy of the commercial heritage that Cadbury's have been part of the city for a very long time.
That's Dunedin's Mayor Dave Cull. The Finance Minister is ruling out a regional fuel tax for Auckland, leaving the city's mayor struggling to find new ways to fund major transport projects and residents potentially facing large rate hikes. Stephen Joyce has told Phil Goff a new tax is not part of the government's plans, and any eventual road charges would replace existing taxes and charges. Mr Goff has been pushing for a fuel tax because Auckland's facing an annual $400 million funding gap for the next decade. If that had to be covered by ratepayers, they could face a hike of up to 16% next year, something that Mr Goff says he doesn't want to see happen. He says the comments from Mr Joyce are disappointing.
That's consistent with his position in the past. I hope that given the worsening traffic congestion in Auckland, he may have reconsidered that. But at this stage, he has ruled it out, and that's fine. The government has the power to do that, but they have a corresponding obligation to say what now to relieve Aucklanders from the growing congestion and the gridlock that every one of us suffer from each day in the Auckland area.
That's Auckland's Mayor Phil Goff there. Well, could plans for a new highway north of Auckland be the death knell for the small town of Wellsford? An indicative route for a new motorway between Auckland and Northland, which would circumvent the town centres of Warkworth, Wellsford and Tahana, was made public on Tuesday. Our reporter Tom Furley paid Wellsford a visit.
About an hour's drive north from central Auckland along State Highway 1 sits Wellsford. It's a little town with around 1,700 residents recorded in the last census. Shops, cafes, petrol stations and bakeries line the state highway, which runs right through the middle of town. The main way north towards Whangarei, it brings with it a constant stream of cars and trucks, something that local Helen Wright says has become an issue.
I don't like the stock trucks and heavy trucks going through, and the townies go too fast through the town. Like, you run for your life, it costs pedestrian crossing.
Tony and Kathy Holloway live in Mangawhai, but often go to Wellsford for shopping and the odd haircut.
It's far too busy. It's impossible. It's really awful.
I think it's dangerous actually, and it's just too busy.
The new motorway aims to address these concerns, as well as make the way north quicker and safer by straightening the road and bypassing the dangerous stretch through Dome Valley. Once it's built, Transport Agency predicts fatal and serious injury crashes in the area will go down 80%, and the traffic through towns will reduce by around 90%. For truck driver Bonnie Waiomio, it could put an end to her town visits.
Well, every Wednesday I stop here and buy a latte, so yeah, otherwise I come through here daily because I drive a freight truck. So, but using the bypass, I'd probably stay on the bypass.
But without visitors and through traffic, some locals like Nolene Hay are worried businesses will suffer.
The council consider Wellsford a service town. People pass through, we're nothing. We're not a village, we're just a service town. So if they bypass a service town, what are we? Like they stop here for fuel, for food, for everything.
Sandra Shaw owns the Welford Sports and Leisure Shop along the main stretch. She's a fan of the traffic.
For example, in January, I don't see any locals hardly, it's all tourists. So my business relies on the tourists. If they go on the bypass road, we'll miss them. I think it's probably good for the through traffic that definitely isn't going to stop in Wellsford, you know, like your big trucks and things like that don't do deliveries. But if all the tourists hop on that lane, we're going to miss a lot of them.
Local Helen Wright says the cafes and bakeries will be most affected.
I think it will hit the town though. It will die for a while. But mind you, look at O River, you bypass that, but I tend to go the long way around to go to Silverdale, but I never stop at O River Township, but I stop at Silverdale. So it probably will affect the shops here, because look at what's in town, mostly eateries.
The route is still to be finalised and public feedback is being sought, with information days starting this weekend. If confirmed, the Transport Agency plans on applying for consents by 2018. For Checkpoint, Tom Furley.
Team New Zealand has launched the boat it'll use to contest the America's Cup in Bermuda in just over 3 months. The team says the use of pedals to power the hydraulics is an idea they believe is unique to their boat, but they admit it is a punt. They hope it will provide more power to the boat's control systems. The skipper, Glenn Ashby, says they've been working on the idea in secret for a while.
Yeah, we basically looked at the pedalling option about 3 years ago, give or take a couple of months, and it's something that's been on the table for a very long time, and really over the last 18 months we've put a huge amount of effort into developing that to a stage now where we can actually get the boat on the water and actually use it as a realistic way to power the yacht. So the testing phase, the jig testing, all the pump development and everything that's gone into it has been extremely critical to make it all happen, and it's been a collective involvement of a lot of people from a lot of different departments within the team to be able to come together and make that a reality from the existing grinding pedestals.
And if the pedals deliver, I don't know, do you call them pedals?
Yeah, call them whatever you like, yeah, pedals is fine.
If they deliver what you hope, what does that actually mean to the way the boat can sail?
Yeah, look, obviously efficiency is one of the keys to getting the boat around the track, but you need power as well, and the boats are very underpowered as far as what you actually need to do all the manoeuvres and adjust the wing and the jib and the foils all at once in some manoeuvres. So there's absolutely, I don't think there'd be any team out there that would say, oh, we've got too much power to sail these boats. So we've basically looked at it as a challenge to be able to use as much power as we can effectively, and if you've got a little bit of extra power and you use it efficiently, hopefully that turns into performance and speed.
And finally tonight, back to Christchurch, where offers of assistance have flooded in for people who've been affected by the fire. Facebook pages have been inundated with thousands of people offering rooms, beds, sometimes even whole houses for people forced to evacuate. Leanne Simkin runs the New Zealand Lost Pet Register, and she worried people staying in hotels and other temporary accommodation wouldn't be able to take their pets. So she asked if anyone was in a position to help, and as she told Zach Fleming, in less than a day, more than 1,000 people have offered to pet sit.
We've had an amazing response. I put the post up just after 8 o'clock last night. The offers for help were still flowing in at 1:30 this morning. When I got up at 6 o'clock this morning, there was a backlog of people offering help, whether it be taking in pets, helping with livestock, or even offering accommodation to people that were being evacuated.
Yeah, it's remarkable, and people are still posting.
They are still posting. We've had well over 1,000 people commenting, offering help, and we've asked if they couldn't help, if they could share the post, and over 6,000 shares so far as well.
And you've heard of a couple of people taking up those offers?
Yes. I know of one lady that's actually, her and her daughter have taken in 6 dogs and 6 cats on their own, so it's amazing.
Not an easy task.
Not at all.
They must be quite loving animal people.
Yeah, I believe they've got the correct sort of setup for it with proper dog cages and things like that. So I was in tears last night watching the responses come in, because sometimes there's so much bad things in the world. It's amazing to see the amount everybody pulled together, and it wasn't just Christchurch people. There was offers of help from as far north as Whangarei right down to Dunedin. A lot of the offers won't be taken up or won't be needed, but people are feeling so helpless, and to have a place where they can at least make the offer, they feel like they are contributing in some way.
Well, that's it for tonight from me and John Campbell in Christchurch. Have a great night.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The Christchurch Mayor warns it will be weeks before all danger from the huge port fires has passed. A Defence Force Hercules is heading to Australia to stock up on firefighting supplies. The Christchurch and Selwyn mayors says the Civil Defence Minister has not directly questioned their handling of the fires. Dunedin's mayor has a plan to help workers who could lose their jobs when the Cadbury factory closes. And the Pike River families hope to take their fight for justice to the Supreme Court. More news and weather at 7.
Kathleen. In this week's New Horizons, we go local with recent music by the Tweed and Tattletale Saints, both of which prove that the old folky spirit of the 50s and 60s is still flourishing. I've been looking for a girl like you, Kathleen. Join me